this was following, there was a call-up one night, meaning we went in with 2 APCs, and we started driving towards Abu Snena. This was after there had been too much shooting in town, meaning the Arabs started shooting in the direction of the Jewish settlement, and we fired back. Well, sometimes we used to go in there to demonstrate. When the shooting would get out of hand, we would simply go in, would go with the APCs, pay a visit to Abu Snena just to make our presence felt. Do all sorts of things. Shoot at some houses just to intimidate them, so, I don't know. Just so they won't try again. Anyhow, that night we went with 2 APCs, one of them belonging to the platoon commander. That's the one I was in, and another one following us. And what we did simply in order to deter them, we simply moved through Abu Snena with 2 APCs, and all what we did was shoot. Shoot. We were shooting. We stopped by a house, we moved through a street, and we fired at houses. Not at windows. We fired at all kinds of houses. And I remember I was like a slightly better shot. He was a sharpshooter, which is a sniper for closer distance. My task was to shatter streetlights. And I remember that I fired at car windshields. And one of the soldiers who was with me fired a rifle with a grenade launcher right into a shop, simply into a Palestinian shop, to blow up the shop. And all of this for no good reason, I mean. And that one of us asked himself what he was doing in order to actually, by a way of response. I remember myself that night. I really meant it when I said that it was me who fired at cars, fired street lights, me who fired at cars, because it was me. I mean, among all of those soldiers I was shooting, and I remember that not one of us that night, all of us were happy that we got the opportunity to shoot at street lights and at cars. Because there's nothing so cool, nothing like hearing a streetlight blow to bits after you've taken aim at it. And I remember us doing it with such determination and with such a smile. And I don't know, I consider myself someone who actually did think of what he was doing during his army service and tried to avoid doing such things. And I remember where this reality how it managed to sweep me into doing those things without consciousness, without any thoughts. Maybe yes afterwards, but what good is that? Simply with a shit-eating grin on my face. I read this testimony, Nir's testimony, not because it's the only testimony in the book that describes these violent patrols. I read it because he speaks about himself. When we call ourselves breaking the silence, we refer to 2 levels of silence that we have to break. And the first and most important one is the personal level. Personal to understand what we do. Because back then it all had names. Deterrence fire, reaction fire, violent patrols, making your presence felt. And I can continue on for, hours and giving examples of how everything has a military logic. How everything has a name and it fits in and makes sense. It's also the other dimension, the second level of silence, which is, for 4 months I was there shooting almost every night. The next morning, my parents woke up in Jerusalem. They turned on the radio and they heard a sentence that every Israeli knows by heart. IDF forces responded fire to the sources of fire in Hebron. That sounds neat. That sounds clean. Nothing wrong here. And I think the most important thing we understood as a group when we were still soldiers that brought us to do breaking the silence, we realized that the reality as we know doesn't cross through checkpoints into Israel. Checkpoints might have a lot of different things to serve. One of the symbolic things they serve is this silence. This reality doesn't cross through. We never recognize the source of the fire. Anyone who was in combat in urban areas will tell you that there's no chance, no way you'll recognize random, sporadic sources of fire in urban areas. It just doesn't happen. But that's how people really, get fit the information. And yes, I know, today no one is shooting here. Things are very calm, very much. But all what we spoke before this that's the status quo here in Hebron. And that's still something which is exactly the same level of source of the fire. It's something that doesn't cross it. And it doesn't mean I don't think you need to shoot a neighborhood with grenade machine guns in order to do wrong, in order to be corrupt. Who was it that asked about the surveillance cameras? I'll give you an example of one of the members of Breaking the Silence, the one who served there until the end of 2005. Hebron is wired up with video cameras like the old city of Jerusalem. And up in the barracks in Teromeda, there's a group of female soldiers who operate all this, all the screens and all the cameras, and everything is recorded. One day, the police used these footage to prosecute a settler for attacking a Palestinian. If you have a camera on the street, you'll see also these kind of stuff, right? 2 days after, the order came down from the Brigadier General. Policemen are not allowed into the room with the screens, and you're not allowed to move to pass on any info unless you have a direct order from the Brigadier General. Now, what happened in between, we can only assume, but that's the fact.